Welcome to Power Boat Talk, the podcast where we talk everything performance boats with your host, Joe Road.
Hello, welcome to Power Boat Talk. This episode is brought to you by SoCal Jet Boats with owners Brad and Brittany Martin. I had the pleasure of having Brad on episode 28 of Power Boat Talk, so go check that out. SoCal Jet Boats was one of the original online forums and is still a great resource for all kinds of performance boat info. SoCal Jet Boats also has an online store that has a fantastic selection of hot boat apparel and a full line of jet pump parts and accessories. SoCal Jet Boats is also a great supporter of boat racing out here on the West Coast, and you can find them at most ADBA and NJBA drag boat races and the Southern California Speedboat Club circle boat races. You can also find them on one of the stops on their California River Summer Tour, which is going on now. Follow SoCal Jet Boats on Instagram and Facebook, or go to SoCalJetBoats.com for more information. This episode is brought to you by BoatLoanGuy.com and owner Scott Angle. Scott will do his best to make your boat or RV purchase as quick and as stress-free as possible. Scott offers loans for as low as $20,000 and up to $5 million, which should be enough to take care of that boat of your dreams. He offers loans for as long as 20 years, and oftentimes he'll give you a same-day approval on no-doc loans. Scott guarantees the best rates in the industry. Follow Scott on Instagram and Facebook at RV and Boat Loans, or go to BoatLoanGuy.com for more information or to fill out an application. Today I have with me two of the all-time greats in the world of water ski racing. Got Mr. Chuck Stearns and Mr. Mike Avila. So they're joining me today to talk all things water ski racing. And of course, when we talk about Chuck, we got a lot of Catalina race stuff to talk about. So thanks, guys, for putting this together. We got it all worked out finally.
Great. Yeah, it's going to be fun.
So let's start off. The Catalina race is coming up here in July, and you guys are doing something a little bit unique this year, I guess. Now, Mike, you were the winning driver last year. You one of your boats, you won the race with Cameron
Nix.
That's right, Cameron Nix. You won last year with Cameron Nix, and this year you're going to have and you had a special guest in your boat last year, right? A NASCAR guy.
Yeah, Kurt Busch.
And this year you're going to have another special guest in the boat with you.
My last living hero, Chuck Stearns, will be in the boat with me this time.
So
I'm alive.
How did that work out? Was he asking or were you asking?
Actually, the organization, Long Beach Boat and Ski Club, Randy Gerald called me and asked me. He kind of asked me what my plans were, because I have some other friends in NASCAR that do want to. That's on their bucket list to go run the race, and he asked me what I was doing. I said, right now I'm not really sure. Eric Amarola was thinking about coming out and riding with us. And he goes, well, I'm thinking about doing something really neat. Do you think you could get Chuck to ride in the boat? And I said, that would be incredible to have Chuck ride in the boat. And I go, I will certainly ask him, but I bet he'll do it because, that would be outstanding. So they have a couple things they're trying to do for the Catalina's 75th anniversary. And so having Chuck ride along with us is going to be, well, for me, it's going to be awesome. That's for sure.
Yeah. Now, Chuck, have you ever ridden in the race?
Let me see. Wow. You mean it like an observer?
Yeah, exactly.
You mean inside the boat?
Yes, sir.
You know what? I never thought about that. This is the first race. I'm not on the ski and a participant, I guess you might say, but this is more than a participant. I'm thinking, oh my God. Okay, it takes a lot of teamwork and team get-togetherness to win that race. And if you have some jerk in there just, watching everything. So I've got to act like I'm really part of the crew. But I'm not going to be part of the crew. I'm not going to say, hey, he can go faster, or hey, let's go fast. I'm not going to, nothing like that. I'm just going to observe. In fact, I might have a camera on this helmet right here. This is the last ski helmet I ever built. And that was for Kenny Columbaro. And he passed away, but he had the same size head as mine. And Mike's got my helmet, so I'm going to wear this
it's in the
helmet. I
boat.
can put a little, you know.
That your last helmet
So,
rides with us every race.
to me, this is like skiing the race. In fact, I woke up this morning feeling that sick. I always get sick. I never eat before a race because going out of the breakwater, I start throwing up. Because I have this feeling you can't turn loose, you're going to win, you're going to beat. And that feeling is a driving feeling that it makes you nervous. And I would always get the dry heaves going out. So I didn't want food in my stomach, you know. But I got the same feeling just riding in the boat. It's going to be so neat. I can hardly wait. I won't go to sleep the
That's
night before. I might have to sleep in the front of your boat to make sure I get down there.
Mike might make you sleep in the boat just to make sure you don't get away with that, going.
Yeah, as long as he doesn't throw up in it.
He's got a bed up there. I might just take him up on it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. That's going to be fantastic.
A lot of fun.
So, Chuck, obviously, crazy going back and looking at your history. I mean, you won Catalina in 1955. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
I saw some old pictures. I saw some videos of the boats back then, and man, what a different deal. Especially coming from your tournament ski. I guess I should start there. You're a fantastic tournament skier, and I think you still are, if not the only guy, one of the only guys that ever win all three events and winning the championship. Slalom, jumping, and tricks. And how's a guy that's so ingrained in that? How'd you decide to go water ski racing?
Variety. Tournament skiing, tricks, slalom, and jumping, you just get shots of. In the tricks, you're out there for maybe 80 seconds. Slalom, each run is probably less than a minute. So 4 minutes in a tournament. Jumping, probably from the time you cut to the jump and land on the water, you're talking about 15 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
But racing, you're talking about an hour of continuous skiing. I mean, it's the greatest. And that's one reason why you don't see racers and tournament skiers mixing. They have their own separate worlds because it's the skiing is so different. And but racing itself, I'm a mechanical engineer, graduate of Long Beach State College. It's university now. And if you analyze racing, it is probably the greatest sport for exercise that you can possibly do because you have your arms out in front, you're pulling the line, and at your feet, you have the water pulling you the opposite direction. So from your top of your body to your feet, you have a shearing force. And that shearing force requires every muscle to keep your body from coming apart or losing its joint. So you're actually using every muscle in your body. And I can't think of another sport that does that. And another thing is you have to have endurance. Mike knows that. Mike's one of the greatest racers in the world. He's gone over 145 miles an hour. Imagine that. And you have to be able to have endurance. Oh, I'll say endurance. All the other type of skiing is not endurance, it's just art. You dance on the ski, trick skiing, you cut hard on the slalom, and you jump out in the atmosphere in jumping. So that's the difference. That's how I think about the skiing, tournament skiing and racing.
I think I would agree 100% because, like, to me, when you go to a slalom tournament, like Chuck says, you kind of wait around all day. And then if you make your opening pass, which you should, there's under a minute because the run is actually under 16 seconds. They don't pull you very long before you get to the gates, right? And they certainly don't pull you long after the gate, right? So it's it's less than a minute. And if you make your opening run, and then if you really got yourself pulled up, you might make the second run. But usually by the third run, you're getting at a line length that you're probably not going to get all the buoys, right? So you're virtually done in under 3 minutes of skiing, and you waited all day. And you don't even really know what time you're going to go. Whereas ski racing, they say, okay, you're going to race for an hour and a lap at 1 o'clock, or you're going to race the men's open and it's 10 laps. You're going to go at 11 o'clock or 9 o'clock in the morning. You kind of get yourself prepared, and you get more bang for the buck in a ski race.
Yeah, I never thought about that. And I was going to ask you too, Mike, had you ever thought about going the other direction, getting into solemn stuff? But yeah, I really didn't really think about that. I just think about the guys today, like it's so specialized. I can't see any of those guys jumping into something that takes the physical, the mental, that, ski racing. It's just a different deal, so.
Yeah, and another thing about ski racing, it's not just you, it's your driver, your observer.
Yeah, there's a lot more teamwork. If you can ski really hard and rough and smooth and moderate conditions, then generally you know how to water ski. Yeah, so you could be a fast water ski racer, but in my opinion, not a very good water skier, right? But the ones that are good water skiers, then yeah, they can get into slalom pretty easy.
Did you work out today yet, Chuck?
No, I worked out really hard yesterday, but I do special workouts. I've had two hip replacements, and some issues with my knees, but I'm improving the knees all the time. It wasn't from an injury, just from usage. So I do.
Right.
I call it inversion exercise. I get in an inversion position, and I do sit-ups, arm-ups.
Oh, awesome.
Legs, move my legs, and then twist back and forth. I can lay upside down for an hour in exercise.
Yeah.
It takes a long time to get used to that.
Yeah. I do one just to strength, just one of I hang up just for my back. And yeah, I mean, I only do it for like 6 or 7 minutes, and so I don't know how an hour, man, that's crazy.
Oh yeah, and when you come out of it, you just feel like you're floating. It opens up all your joints.
Yeah,
it's a good way to go.
How long have you been doing those workouts? That kind of workout?
But I used to do it spontaneously, just once in a while.
Oh, okay.
But now I don't. I do chin-ups. I like to do chin-ups.
Okay.
But
that's awesome. You can still do chin-ups?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
When I was at my best, I was doing 20 chin-ups. Now I can do 8. That's hard to do.
I don't think I could do 1.
But nowadays, you ski the Aussie style with the rope wrapped around you, so you're not using your arm pulls that much.
Yeah, you need core. When we were kids, you're talking about training. My dad, who used to make us run sand dunes all the time and stuff like that. When we were kids, because my dad was such a stud, if you couldn't chin yourself 1-arm chin-ups 10 times on each arm, yeah, he thought you were subhuman. You weren't cutting the mustard, man. Yeah, it was tough to be tough around our house.
Yeah.
Chuck knows. Chuck's dad was really, really a hard guy. My dad was the same, the most incredible man I've ever known, but they're both tough. They're both very tough men.
Well, I mean, tough kind of goes hand in hand with perseverant, right? And dedicated. And sometimes that can be, some people can skew that as on the wrong side where, these dads are just as good concerned dads,
Yeah. Hey, there's plenty of times God rest his soul, that I cursed his name when we were kids, that I wanted to go and play, and said he was having us push weights around and things like that, but or go to work. Yeah, I'll be forever grateful for being the son of the greatest dad in the whole world.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, looks like we lost Chuck now.
All that bragging about he knew what he was doing. Now he's out.
Oh my gosh. I'm trying to think. I did a couple times. Well, I did Todd and Randy and Dennis Hall. I did the three of them with me one time, and I had no problems. It was pretty good.
Nordic guys.
I don't know them well, but I thought they were pretty good guys.
They're good guys, but when they lose, they don't think anybody should ever beat them, right?
Yeah.
Look, when you get beat, you get beat. That's all.
Yeah.
You got to deal with it. You get beat.
Yeah. And you know it as well as anybody. I mean, this is a sport where there's a lot of mental in it. And when you get older and when you get responsibilities and when you get other things on your mind and you think about the consequences, it's tough beating a young kid. It's tough beating a young kid at the top of his game. And I think when I had them on the podcast, we kind of talked about that. And they even said, look, Dennis said, I'm not going to pull Todd over his head trying to keep up with the young kid, So that's just life.
Yeah, I mean, for instance, the year we set the record in 2015, that still, knock on wood, still hasn't been broken. That year, I was pulling Jake Taggart, and we come into breakwater, and I knew he was tired. We were pulling him, knowing his legs were shot. And when we got near the breakwater, there was that big commercial fishing boat that has usually like 30, 40 fishermen in it, and he was sitting still. So I was going to take a line. Randy was about 5 ropes behind me off to the left. And so I was going to take a line to come through the breakwater a little bit to the right to make sure if somehow they made a run, I could still straighten the corner out and keep my speed up. And so I was going off the nose of that big boat. And God, probably a quarter mile before I got to him, he took off. He was pulling straight in front of me. And so as we're getting closer, I was like, oh man, I'll clear him, but Jake ain't going to clear him. So I had to back off and jump those wakes. And when we did, Randy went from 5 ropes back to side by side because he didn't hit him. Right. So I was thinking, oh, this is going to be a problem because he's really tired. But he started waving up, and, my observer said, go. He's go. And the third time he said, go, I said, okay, stop telling me to go. I got all the go in the world. You just tell me if he's getting in trouble, right? Because I didn't want him. I didn't want him to go down, right? And when the race was over, I was telling somebody that Jake he really sacked up there at the end, tired and all. He just kept waving up. He wanted to go faster, and he interrupted me and said, hey, make no mistake. I did not want to go faster. But what I was willing to do, I was willing to fall down as opposed to lose. I wasn't going to lose to him after leading him the whole race. I'd rather fall. So I was willing to fall. That's the difference between a 20-year-old skier and a 40-year-old skier. 40-year-old skier is going to say, yeah, well, you got me. Because those falls hurt. I mean, they hurt all the time. It can hurt you anytime, but certainly it takes a lot longer to heal when you're 40 as it does when you're 20. Yeah.
But I mean, you just gotta, I don't know, you gotta know that that's going to happen at some point. So.
Yeah. It's like all great athletes. They all know Mother Nature wins every time.
Yeah. Right. Father time's undefeated. Right.
It's right. You can't defeat them. You can hold them at bay, but you can't beat them. And if you think you can, they're going to remind you that you can't.
Yeah.
Joe, that shy out on the picture behind you there, is that 800?
It is. That was my boat. No, it's not my boat, but that's who I grew up racing with. So, I was next door. I lived next door to Ron Tazarski. Did you know Ron at all and his wife, Terry? Yeah.
Absolutely.
So when I was like 7, 8 years old, we were in a San Gabriel Valley Boat and Ski Club. And Mike Dixon was actually in that club, if you remember Mike Dixon.
Oh, yeah.
And Mike Dixon and Fred Inman and mostly a lot of boat racers. But we did a little ski racing then. And then I didn't ski race again until I was 19, but I always wanted to do it again. So whenever we'd go to the river, my dad would load everybody up in the boat. We go to Mead, Powell, Shasta, and we just start skiing. When everybody got tired, I'd be the guy that like, okay, I'll finish. I would just ski forever. That was my thing. So Ron and my dad were always going at it. My dad's like, my kid skis fast, and my wife skis fast. And then they always had bets. We never got together on it. And then Ron pulled Terry at Catalina one year, and the next year I'm like, okay, Dad, we're going next year. So that was in 1980, and my dad, we had a 21 Hallett and did Catalina. I got second in. This is a story. So I don't even know if I should get a picture. I don't know if my dad has it. I skied on this old Vogue racing ski, dude. It was like 2 inches thick. I don't know if you ever seen one.
Yeah,
really narrow, and that was what he raced on back when I was 7 or 8 because he raced. Yeah. But I used that thing and went to Catalina. Never practiced. We never went over there. Never tried. 21-foot boat, just 60-mile-an-hour boat, and I never fell. And we had went to the aircraft surplus, bought this big freaking compass, stuck it in the bottom of the boat, and we hit the island perfect. We're coming back, and of course I'm just freaking dead tired. And Gary Steele pulls up to us. And it was Nick. I know it was Nick Barron. He was he was driving one of his boats. He was pulling Kathy.
Yeah.
He was pulling Kathy Steele. And they pulled up beside us, and my dad knew Nick, and he waved or whatever. And then they started veering off to the left. And my dad's like, oh my God, he's done this a lot more than me. So he follows him. And of course,
Nick was lost.
We end up going in. We went in the breakwater at San Pedro. And this is my first time ever. I'm fucking dead tired. And so then we come back up the breakwater and we go in. I got second. I lost first by like 30 seconds, man. And the dude, I can't remember that dude's name. He had that novice record for like 10 years. I always remember my dad like, dang, you should have he's like, but dude, I don't trust myself over Nick,
Well, the year that Chuck won his last race, 1981. Okay. There was me, Gary Hamilton, Kurt Schoen, Robbie Woods, me, Gary, Kurt, Robbie. God, there was one more. Forget who was the other guy, but there was 5 of us all going for the lead, and I'm behind Gary. And Gary thinks he's on course. Meyerfire knows we're not on course. To start, Herbst knew. Mike Dixon, I think, was in it too. Maybe Mike was in it. Because I know Jerry was pulling somebody. That was usually Mike. And
what about Buck Baker? Was that around his time too, or was it before?
Yeah, but that wasn't Buck then.
No.
And anyway, nobody wanted to break away from the bunch because everybody thought their compasses were wrong. But Gary thought he was dead on. And so we went, and right when we got up to the breakwater, it was Pedro. And it was right when we pulled in, it got really hazy, foggy. And so we all turned, and then it's like, now it's the front straight of a men's open. But for me, I was pretty lucky because I was the furthest guy on the outside as we made the right-hand turn when we got into Pedro. But now I'm on the inside to turn when we get near going through the regular breakwater and the turn at the back of the Queen Mary and into the finish. And man, everybody just was whacked to the floor going through there. And because it was hazy, glassy, nobody saw this kind of glassed out big old roller. All of us hit this big roller. One of the observers got pitched out. All 5 of us were in the water. All 5 of us.
Wow.
And I mean, I remember Kurt was arguing with somebody that was his ski. Yeah, it's my ski. That's my ski. Because
way.
It was a garbage dump it was a garbage dump. And so my guys yelling at me, just put your foot in the back foot. Just put in the back foot. And so we put only 1 foot in the binding so I could ski with the foot on top.
No way.
Just get around the corner and win. And when we were letting the right line out, there goes Chuck going by in the casket cleaver, and he went by and he won the race.
No way! I'd never heard that story. That's fantastic.
Oh, it was
I'll have to ask you about that with Chuck on. That's a good one.
Yeah, we went. I think we went to get up, and everybody's lines were on top of each other. So we went to get up. We snapped the rope, turned around, tied it off, snapped the rope. Those guys are still over there trying to get the observer in the boat. It was, yeah, it was. We messed up really bad.
Wow, that's crazy.
And crazy is Bert knew all of us. They could see us ahead of them going off that way,
Uh-huh.
and they're just licking their chops because they know
They're
they're
like
dead on.
fools.
Yeah, is that the race? Is that the race in 83? 80, yeah, 83.
It's the race
Okay,
that you won, the
coming
last race
in,
you won.
you guys, we could
82.
see you to our left. We could
It's
see
the
you
last
to
time
our
you won.
left while we're coming back, and Bert thought we were off course, so he slows down. He goes, Should we be over there like that?" And we were just passing the oil derricks. I go, "No, straight ahead." So I was, and then Mary told Bert, "Just, hey, straight ahead." And then he put it back down, and we hit it right. We went right through the entry. It was really neat. But I was doing some of the navigation.
It's good with your back.
But I didn't think you guys were. I didn't think you guys were in the lead because there must have been a pack of 5 of you, 5 or 6. That's you. That's the first time that many people were in the
Yeah, it
lead.
was. Yeah.
How do you, those skiers? Which one
Yeah,
of you
it was
guys
all
got
small
up
boats,
first to
too.
make it to the finish line? Do you remember?
God, I don't remember. I think it was.
Gary Hamilton.
I think Gary Hamilton.
All of you went down on
I
that one
don't
big
remember.
wake, huh?
Yeah, I think Gary
That one
or
big
Robbie,
well,
all of us. Yeah,
yeah.
it was
That's
a
And you
crazy.
don't see it in time
complete
either.
yard sale.
That's crazy.
All of a sudden, there it is.
That was one of the biggest things for me. Was like until you saw the
Yeah.
island, like you just took a deep breath, right? Because you just never knew if you're going to be skiing for 3 hours, right? And as soon as you saw the island, you're like, okay, that's great, you're good. And then coming back, same thing. Until you saw that boat, right? Until remember when they put that spruce goose in, that was like a friggin' light bulb, right? You could see that thing for so far.
Yeah, in 1990, I think I skied the fastest I ever did out. Like I was behind Ron Spindler. At that, I think it was a 30-foot Chiata, right? And man, we were smoking on the way out. And I remember just never even been able to take a chance, look and see on my watch and see where we're at for time or anything like that, right? Because I was just really skiing hard. And then we hit a couple of big bumps and they backed off. And so I looked at my watch really quick and I went, wow, 23 minutes. 23 minutes. We should be running through that island at this speed, right? And then I noticed that the helicopters weren't above us. And so I waved a couple really big downs so they'd slow down. And they were asking, what's going on? So I started pointing at the sky like, hey, where's the helicopters? And I'm showing my wristwatch, right? Where are we? Right? And so they start looking around. And right about then, you could see the nose of the island like 5 miles to the right.
Man.
And so my observer turned around at that time, right? It was, you couldn't use a GPS, obviously. But he looked and they were on 203. So went, holy crap, we're way off, right? And so they turned and we kept skiing at that pace 4.5 minutes before we got to the turn.
Get back on course.
We went around the turn and we skied that hard back. And I remember I finished like 4th and Marty won. And I made up, I think from the time of my turn to the time I made up like 3.5 minutes on the way back, but I still am like 4th. And it's probably the greatest Catalina ski race I ever skied. and we just weren't on course.
Yeah. You just tacked on an extra 5 miles to kind of mess it up.
What?
Yeah. I mean, that's the one thing about that race. It's like the Daytona 500 or the Indy 500. This is the 75th year. Yeah. There's at least 250, 300 tales of sorrow, right?
Yeah.
Along with the 74 tales of happiness, right? There's so many bad things that happen,
Yeah.
Even at 85, I won the race in 85.
Oh, yeah.
They handed me the flag and they took it away from me because the finish line judges were the Lewis family and Jay was observing for Kurt and they just cheated. I mean, There's no question.
I
geez.
remember.
And it's
I
just,
don't remember that. Oh, that sucks.
yeah. Handed me the flag. Everybody, the trophy presentation, everybody was yelling bullshit, bullshit, because everybody saw me. Even Kurt, when we let go, Kurt said, "Oh, you got me, Wedge," because we came from behind him, and they tried to block us in the breakwater, and then they finally stopped zigzagging in front of us and blocking us, and we dove to the inside, and we went by him at the finish, and he knew we beat him, and I go, "Well, that's good that I beat you because that's blocking is completely out of line," and but then they handed me the flag and they came back and took it away.
Oh
Wait a
man,
minute,
I
man.
don't remember that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was just gonna say. I mean, you never winning is exactly what you're saying. I mean, because you dominated everything else for years, and you just had hard luck. I mean, there's so many things that can go wrong out there, man. You can trip so easy out there, and
Yep.
or get lost, or boat. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. There's been a lot of incredible skiers that never got to put their name on the trophy that
Yeah.
deserved it so much. Byron Whipple was one of them. He deserved to get that trophy so many times, and it never worked out for him. Then he had his bad crash and got paralyzed. I mean, he never even got to win a national championship. He's probably the greatest skier to never win a national championship of any kind, age group or any kind. And John Belleville, incredible skier. He won the Catalina Ski Race, but he deserved probably to win more than one. And he certainly deserved to win a national championship as a men's open skier in the men's open, but he never did. And it's just tough. You gotta be really tough, fast. And the '80s, by just sheer numbers, it's factual because our speeds were as faster than they are in a circle race today. The '80s were the toughest time to win anything because there was just the sheer numbers, right? There wasn't one Todd Haig. There was 12 Todd Haigs, right? There wasn't one Wayne Moore. There was 12, right? And so you had to beat 11 of them. If you were one of them, you had to beat 11 of those guys to win the race. And so, we went through that era where the mechanical equipment was failing because we were switching to bigger boats. They were switching to turbochargers and superchargers. Myself and Grant Torrance invented the longer ski. Chuck had a longer ski that he built too, but we started using those Torrance skis so we could go faster over bumpy water. And it just elevated everything. And it was tough. It was a tough time to win a race.
Yeah, fine.
Did you ever have a close one like that, Chuck?
I was in charge of a checkered flag with a really close one, but I've never actually skied. Mike, what I mean? And that was frustrating. That was this race right here.
I do.
I don't know if you can see it, but
Yeah.
let's see. Oh, I had one where three of us were racing for first. Butch was skiing then. That's back in the 50s, 60s, late 50s. And we missed the island and went straight out into the ocean and to San Clemente. And we thought that was the Catalina. And I was looking at the island and I was saying, this isn't Catalina, guys. And I thought, where are we? Because I didn't know there was another island out there. But that was one time that one of the three would have won, if we hadn't got lost. That was the Gold Digger and somebody from up north.
Remember, Chuck, you ran out?
I can't remember who. No, from Arizona skier Greer or something. And we just pulled into the island. It was kind of rough. And there was target shells all over. And we figured we didn't have any communications, but we figured we'd be rescued. And they came about, it was midnight. Meanwhile, we're on the island. We started a little fire. Butch and I went up the hill and found a baby lamb and brought the lamb back. And the goat. And was that a goat? Yeah, a goat. And the Coast Guard finally came in, and we tied all three boats together, and they pulled us back. And Butch and I and the observers we went back inside the Coast Guard cutter. It was a big one. It was about 200 feet. It was a large cutter. And the captain was mad at the fact that we had this goat running around in the galley because it was making droppets and stuff. That was a strange race, I guess. If you had this, yeah,
You brought the
kept
goat
it out
home?
at the farmhouse for about a year, and then it passed away. It never did acclimate itself to being calm and not being wild, you know. But the goat,
That's what
the
started
old
the
goat,
nickname calling you the
that's
goat.
that's where it came from.
All these years, we didn't know where that came
Now
from.
you
Oh, my.
know.
Yeah.
Just don't tell
Chuck
anybody
Stearns
else.
did it.
You can blackmail me.
Yeah,
I'll
that's
blackmail
awesome.
you.
Hey,
Keep that secret.
yeah, nobody else will
Good.
see this. I think I heard some stories, Chuck. Did you have some crazy training stories? Like did I hear like did you
Yeah.
guys used to go over the island at
Yeah, that's
night?
when I used to practice behind
Wow.
Kenny Columbero. He was an Italian. His father owned a lot of grape property out of Cucamonga.
Hmm.
And we used to practice, and Kenny was crazy. So each of us
Hmm.
would think of something crazy. So I go, Kenny, let's go to Catalina tonight. We'll leave when it's dark. The moon's out. So we got a little bit of light. He didn't have a compass, but we could see the outline of the island from the moon. And so we took off. We didn't have an observer. So he was watching me in the mirror. And at night, when you're skiing across the ocean, it's like diamonds all, when the water sparkles, it sparkles with the moonlight on it, and you're skiing through diamonds. It's beautiful.
Uh-huh.
You couldn't believe it. So we wanted to go to the isthmus, the isthmus, and get some lobsters. So we hit Catalina, we hit the Avalon, and then I got in the boat and we went wide open down to the isthmus, grabbed a bunch of, this is about 1 a.m. now. We grabbed a bunch of seaweed and tied up the boat, and I got my skin diving stuff, and don't tell anybody, but this was the hottest no, this was in season, but I didn't check the size. Well, I got about 20 lobsters. The next morning we cooked them, had nothing but lobsters, and then skied back. That was a really fun thing. It's something that when you do something like that, it stays in your memory. You never forget it. And
Yeah,
that was
that's amazing.
amazing.
Thanks for sharing that one. How about you, Mike? Any crazy water ski training rides, tricks, or?
No, for me, it was, I just, I did a lot of stuff just uh, because of my dad. My dad used to say, if you're not better than them as a skier, just outwork them. And so I always, I did a lot of crazy stuff that people would think are nuts when you're training. I mean, back when we skied hands out front, I used to hook on one of those like a little trailer dolly thing with a handle. I actually put bicycle handlebars on it and would hook it onto the trailer ball, and I would pull my boat up and down the street, just pull it
Wow.
backwards, up and down the street, up and down. So I'd work my legs, my back, my arms. Yeah, I mean that, and then go run up. So I'd pull the boat up the street. Then there was a hill right there. I'd run up
Wow.
the hill, come back down, pull the boat back the other side of the street. Then I'd go back up the street, run up the hill, come back, and yeah, just anything to try to make myself stronger, right? And that's what I used to always think that won me so many races in the '80s was I could be skiing so strong, I could be skiing side by side with Kurt or Robbie or whoever it was, and they'd be giving themselves 95% of their strength and ability to do it, and I'd be standing there using 40% of my strength, and we would just go, okay, well, it's just a matter of time, and we'll start pulling away, and then we did, and so that was just really everything to hard work. Just not crazy stuff. I mean, we did plenty of skiing at night.
Did you?
When we were out raising hell, we went out and did plenty of skiing at night, but never for training purposes. Just that was just fun
For the
purposes.
heck of it. Yeah. Awesome. So Chuck, back in the old days, I mean, nobody trained like people train now. Like we talked about that a little while ago. You're doing some inversion training. Kind of when did you start training, and did you lift weights, or what did you do back in the day when you first started getting into taking care of your body?
I'd have to say I have this problem. I go into deep depression, and the way I come out of it is by working out.
Oh.
So I started doing that
Awesome.
in grammar school. So I was early teens, and that was my way of getting around depression. And I still do it. And then, of course, when I got into skiing, then it was important to be in shape, So then I really, really poured it on. And we opened up a ski school at the Salton Sea, and that gave me a chance to ski every day and stay in shape. And then I did a lot of running. So that's about probably my whole life I've been working out, And I do it just to feel good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man.
And, you want to be healthy as you can. Between working out and a proper diet, and you want to clear your mind with stress, which is hard to do. I don't know how Mike does it. He's got his business going and he's doing all of this. When I was doing my business, it was hard to do the skiing and the business at the same time, But working out is just a natural thing for me to do.
Oh, it's good, man. Way back then, you realized the benefits, from a mental standpoint. Obviously now all the research and everything is just no question about, what it does mentally to help you by God. Even if you go walk for 10 minutes, it helps you mentally. So that was good. And man, I'll tell you, some of those pictures when you were younger, man, like there's a great picture. I'll have to put it on this, but there's a picture of you in a slalom. I don't know if it was a competition, but man, you were freaking ripped, man.
But you don't feel it.
Dude,
he was always
you don't
ripped.
think yourself. That just comes with just working out. It's just a natural thing.
Those guys like Chuck, who was, I've said this many times, right? Chuck Stearns, we've been friends now. This is our 56th year of being friends. But, when I met him when I was 10, he changed my life because I wanted to be like Chuck. Chuck was this guy. I mean, nobody was bigger than my dad, right? Nobody. Never, nor will there ever be anybody bigger than my dad. But Chuck was somebody, here was this guy, and all I knew at 10 years old, I wanted my name one day to be spoken when Chuck's name was spoken, right? And so I looked at him and how he was lean, and so I knew I needed to be lean. And then there was Butch, and Butch was this big muscular guy. And so I said, man, I'm going to make myself muscular and lean, right? And it's sad because I'm so grateful for my relationship with Chuck, right? Everybody's like, today, people think that I wear spots on my helmet because I don't want to paint my helmet all orange. But I have spots on my helmet because my hero wore polka dots. And so my helmet has polka dots to always honor the guy that changed my life and gave me a mission to always stay out of trouble, somewhat stay out of trouble, but to focus on what I wanted to do. And it sucks that Butch didn't live longer, and he had this horrible accident, because it would have been really great to grow up and with the greatness of both those guys, because I idolized them both. And Chuck was a really muscular guy, and Butch was, and Chuck was so lean and so graceful, right? Butch was more power, and it was great to have those two targets to always, try to look and perform like.
Chuck, I mean, obviously what Mike just said, I mean, you and Butch, I mean, we're talking about Butch Peterson, like you guys get mentioned a lot of times in the same breath. Would you kind of consider, was he your toughest competition, you think?
He was
How was it competing
really
against
strong
him?
in competition. I can remember one race. We had V bottoms, so it's in the 50s, and we were racing side by side all the way to Catalina. His dad was pulling him, and my dad was pulling me. And I would look over at him, and then you don't want to look at anybody else. You want to keep your focus on what you're doing. We weren't going that fast, but it was that fast in those days, with all the rough water, and you're coming off of swells, and you have a very short ski. And Butch was looking at me, and I could tell he was looking at me because he was a little bit ahead. So I could see him on my left, and he fell. And I thought, wow. And I felt good because I thought, now I'm going to win this race, because I wasn't sure. And as I'm skiing along, I fell. And then Butch passes me. So I get out of the water and catch up with him. And we're racing again. No. And he fell once more. And I won the race. But it was funny. We kept looking at each other. And that was causing us to fall. Yeah, he was a very dedicated skier. He wanted to win so bad. Sometimes they'd take pictures of us standing together, and he had to be taller than me. And you could tell he was on his tiptoes. It looked so funny because he wanted to be a little bit taller. So the competition, just the driving thing,
really?
It's within everything. And it was really sad what happened to him because he was in his top condition. Yeah. And he was working out for the Olympics, and he fell off. He went out of control going down a hill, riding a sprint bike, and a truck pulled in front of him, and he hit the truck. No helmet. And he was in a coma for 6 months. Came out of that, but he never recovered 100%. But he was one of the most fit persons I've ever known. And he was really good competition.
Yeah. Were you guys pretty close off the water?
We just knew each other through racing and stuff. And at Elsinore, they'd have parties and stuff. And I was at a party where his dad was there and my dad was there. That happened maybe a couple times. That's about it. But we'd see each other at the tournaments,
I was doing research for an article I did about the 9-hour history of the Parker Enduro, and I didn't realize he had a pretty illustrious boat racing career too in the early days. A lot of Salton Sea 500s and Enduros, and I didn't realize he had boat raced that much.
He's Mike is like him times 1,000. With Mike driving the way he is and the boat he has, it baffles my mind really, because the equipment is so important, and then he has the ability to know about skiing 100. He's 100% skier too. So when he's driving, he knows about slack, about going around buoys.
Sure.
And when rough water's coming, he can see that, and he knows what it takes to ski over certain conditions. And he's the driver right now, in this coming race, especially.
So Mike and I were just we were talking off when I think you guys were lost for a minute, but how tough in the 80s, like the competition was. So I'll kind of ask you, Mike, like who was the guy you kind of feared the most, or was the guy you the toughest competition when you were doing this?
Well, honestly, the guy I thought was the toughest guy to beat. There was two of them. And we probably shared equal amount of wins to each other, for a while. Then I obviously I won a whole bunch more than he did in the 80s. But early in the 80s, Byron Whipple didn't matter if he was taped up from head to toe. He was so hard to beat. Matter of fact, sometimes if he was hurt more, he'd be harder to beat. and then Rory Brown. Rory Brown
Oh,
from Australia. Him and I had some really, really, really strong battles. And he, great guy, all the respect in the world from. I mean, there were so many good guys in the '80s. I mean, there was just so many, but the guys that were so hard to beat. Rory was just relentless. Byron was relentless. Um, but Byron got hurt early in the '80s, so that sucks. And then he passed away.
for like the 10 or 12 years I did it, it seems like every couple of years an Australian guy would show up and you're like, never heard of the guy. He'd come and win 3 or 4 races and then never see him again. It
Yeah,
seemed like Rory was kind of one of those guys, at least that I remember.
yeah.
Who was that
Just
kid?
I
There was
raced him a lot other places in the world too.
yeah, okay.
Here, from 82 to 90, I won like 98% of the races. So I'd give them a beating over here. We'd go over there and they'd pay me back. Like, but it's also, it's your team, right? That's the toughest part. Like I'll fly to Australia and there's always a makeshift team to pull you over there.
Oh, gotcha.
He comes over here, but Rory, he got hooked up with Lance Balthazar, and they were a tough team for a few years. Um, and Byron had Dick Seiler, who was an incredible driver, and Bill Myers. Both those guys are incredible drivers. So they had good teams, because in ski racing you need to have a good team. Like the driver is so important, the observer is so important, the equipment, right? It's got to be able to run to the finish line. Those are tough things to do. I was lucky. We won that many races because Gary Steele had impeccable equipment. Jimmy Anderson was always turning the wrenches on that. It was impeccable. And Gary hated to lose as bad as I did. And my observer Ron McGrin, the same. We had 3 guys in the boat that just despised losing and would do anything in the world to make sure we didn't lose. So that's hard to beat. It's really hard to beat. And it's why Todd, Randy, and Dennis are hard to beat wherever they go, because they've been together so long, right? I mean, those guys probably know each time when they're each going to go to the bathroom. I mean, they know when they're hungry. I mean, those 3 guys are really tight, and they've been together for like 15, 18 years. So, and Randy has really good equipment. So it's a tough deal to win. You gotta get together. Like for me, I bring somebody over, and we just have to put in the work. Try to work on their skiing, change their skiing sometime, get them in a different mental state, and try to prepare them to beat a really tough team.
Yeah, that makes good sense. How about Chuck? I don't think did you? Oh, I think when you were doing it, did you ever race internationally?
No, it wasn't
I know
organized
you tournament
like it
skied. You
is
did
now.
internationally.
Actually, the Catalina race, they consider that as a national tournament, But as far as the National Association, no. I don't know. That probably started in the early 80s.
Yeah, you think?
Well,
I don't
yeah,
know.
they started having organized races like Australia more in the early '70s, late '60s, but it wasn't like today. I mean, the travel wasn't nothing like today. I go to Australia for the weekend to race.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, people don't do that stuff. I mean, the world just is so much smaller now. But South Africa in the '80s had boats. The '80s, just everywhere around the world, it was boiling. And then for a lot of different reasons, economy, danger. A lot of people were getting hurt, and then a lot of people got killed, and there's a lot of reasons why expense, a lot of reasons why it started to die off. But that was its peak.
And then Chuck, another part of your career, and both of you guys got into this too. I mean, what motivated you to get into doing a speed run? Doing a
the Marines,
taking a run at the record,
Marine
the speed
Stadium,
record,
where they had the boat drags, quarter-mile boat drags, and that was getting really popular.
Yeah.
But it was a little branch off from lap skiing or tournament skiing, And one day I just grabbed the ski. I had my bathing suit on. I was during a drag race tournament with Ray Caselli, he was the top dragger. He had a blown 300C Chrysler blown with fuel, that nitro, whatever they put in the fuel that makes it smell sweet. So I just grabbed my ski and walked down to the beach, and Ray Caselli he was like a king. I mean, that guy, I think he went 160 in a quarter mile, and that's with a flat bottom. And he had his crew working on the boat, polishing everything up, and he was just sitting on a chair like a king. He reminded me of a king. And he was watching me walk over to the boat, and I had my ski, my polka dot bathing suit. And I go, "Hi, Ray." He goes, "Chuck, what do you want?" And I go, "Can you give me a ride through the traps?" And everybody polishing the boat, they froze. And they looked at me and they looked at the king. "You're going to tie up behind this boat?" And that got me into it. But that was funny because it's the start of drag skiing, And so literally
So it was
spontaneous.
literally just on. It was
Yeah.
literally.
And
Yeah. But it was just literally on a whim like
I
that.
used to build a ski that was thermodynamically, not fluidly dynamic, resistant to drag. And Ray Caselli flipped his boat in Northern California and broke his neck, of all things, and passed on. That was terrible. And his wife got a hold of me, and she said, "I wish you would have been wearing one of your helmets." That was really, and I go, "Well, I really felt sorry for the whole thing." But anyways, that's kind of a happy, sad memory, I guess, because he was really, really a boat driver through the traps, quarter mile traps. He was like the king.
Yeah.
Then they used hydroplanes. Hallett made a couple of hydroplanes that they used that were faster than the flat bottoms. I skied behind Hallett for a record once and skied behind Ray Caselli. He pulled me through the traps. We went 128 behind Hallett, 118. But it was through a quarter mile trap, and it was certified by Otto Crockett, I think was his name. He could legally certify speeds and stuff. So I skied behind both of them. That was quite a thrill. Quarter mile drag is you're 150 feet. I used 150 feet.
Yeah.
You're 150 feet behind the boat, and they pulled the boat down, and I lined up at the other end of the stadium, and he started up his Chrysler with a blown Chrysler, and the water. When you're in the water, it feels like you're being massaged. There was that feeling of, and it just was terrifying, but it felt good, and you've got excited. It's almost like the start of the Catalina race. And he would take off, and when he took off, it was like he had to put his foot all the way down, or else the boat would something about either no speed or full speed. And he yanked me out of the water like I don't know how I hung on. And then that speed, that it's strange when you're going fast because you get so much drag. You got to push against it. You got to get closer to your ski to have more power, and you're just unbelievably going. And it's just, yeah. And then the hardest part for me was coming to a peaceful stop, because when you stop, you're going to get slack because he's going to take his foot all the way off. So you know that. So as soon as you get through the traps, what I do, I just let go. I put my hands to the side. As soon as you let go, you start going forward because the drag takes over. So you lift your arms up and the wind will blow you back. Hopefully you can come to a stop. But it's very hard to hang on going that fast and coming to a stop because the boat has to stop so fast, and that slack, you can't take up the slack. And the slack causes you to fall backwards. And that's the worst way to fall. If you fall backwards, you're going to get hurt at that speed. You want to fall forward and go into a roll. Backwards, you hit the water in your back, and it throws you into your ski or into, it opens you up. You can't tuck as well. And you got to really learn how to fall. But that got me into drag skiing. That was kind of fun.
It's pretty amazing to me that from a driver's standpoint, he was able to do it gracefully enough for you to make a good run. I mean, I would think that'd be something you really have to work through.
You got to
with that
ski
kind of
outside the
horsepower
wake.
and just so many
tangle with the
dynamics
rooster
to
tail.
it, you know?
And outside the wake, you worry about a little rough water. And if you hit some rough water when you're going that fast, it's pretty rough. It's pretty hard to ski. So you worry about that. And then you worry about turning loose so you don't fall backwards. And so you lean forward when you turn loose. Then you start going forward, and you don't want to fall. So what I do, I just put my arms up like a parachute, and it brings me back, and then I can balance myself, usually. But so many people got hurt in the drags. They stopped doing that. When did they stop doing that, Mike? Do you know? The mid-'80s?
Yeah, late, but mid-'80s, actually. About mid-'80s, because, the barefoot guys were getting killed. So we did it out. The insurance part got really hard for you to get insurance to hold on to the back of the boat. It started getting tough. I did a kilo run in 87, I think. I went, at that time it was the kilo record. I think it still is. Nobody does the kilo, but I went 1:18.9 something and 1:19.01 the other direction. But that actually, I thought that was so easy because I was wrapped up and I was a longer ski. And so because the guy gets slowed down. Yeah, because it wasn't a quarter mile, Chuck. It was a kilo. So we were running pretty hard coming up. So there wasn't that. I know what you're talking about because I did 123 pre-running for my brother, and that when you're going behind hydros, like we went behind alcohol hydros, and they just whack the gas and you're up, and then you get a little bit of slack right there, and then they start accelerating, and it's harsh, and the rooster tail that comes up from hydros, it's blowing by you. You're trying to lean outside the wash. It's gnarly. And then a hydro, when all they do is lift a little bit and they lose the air underneath the hydro, that thing really comes to a stop in a hurry. And so, like Chuck's saying, if you haven't dropped the handles before they do that, I mean, you're in trouble. Like, and I lucked out because Chuck is 100% correct too. If you fall backwards, what happens is you usually eat the ski because it's in front of you. You start to tumble and the ski's in front of you. So generally it's going to tumble with you and you're just going to get beat up by that ski, right? But the guy I was going behind, it was in Chowchilla, and I was pre-running for my brother, God rest his soul. So I went first, and the wind was blowing at Chowchilla, and it was blowing over this levee, and so I was probably on the better side than what my brother was going to be on because I skied on the left, he skied on the right, and when I got to the end, the levee dropped. So that wind that was blowing over it was coming through right there. And I got right to the traps and I went to let go and that wind caught my chest. Man, it's like slapped me onto my back. And man, I got lucky because it slapped me on my back and it was blowing crossways. So it slapped me on my back, but also twisted me. So the ski tore off my feet. And I watched that. I had my eyes like this and that ski went right past my head, but I missed it.
Wow.
And then they picked me up out of the water. I was okay. And I got on the radio and told my brother, don't go, right? Because you're going to be on the right side. You're going to get to the end. The wind will be bigger. You're going to keep getting blown into the wash. And, but my brother was tough, ballsy, and on a mission to he always wanted to break Chuck's record, not because he wanted to beat Chuck. He always wanted to beat Chuck, Danny, Craig, out of respect for those guys, right? And so he just said, I'm going to go. And I kept saying, don't go. You're going to blow over the front. Don't go. And he said, I'm going. And so he went over the handlebars at the lights at 129 because he got to the end and the wind just hit him in the chest and he was still holding on. So it literally stopped his ski and he just went flying over the bars, 129. He was semi okay. He didn't break anything. He was internally, he was a mess. But and then he finally broke that record. He went 130 to break the record, which is still the fastest quarter mile record. 131.00. And he has the fastest ET. He's 6.92 ET, that's gnarly in a quarter mile, right?
Yeah, that's
that is
awesome.
Cracking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And your brother, I don't know if we mentioned his name. Brother is Rick Avila, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for mentioning that. That's cool.
Yeah. I like the drag. The drag stuff was good. The difference is, my brother, we competed against each other in everything. And so when it came to drag skiing, I was really focused on being Chuck Stearns. And so my brother was focused on breaking that quarter mile record. And so I just didn't want to, I didn't want to compete with him in that too. And my brother told me so many times, he'd say, man, you're so much stronger than me. You could probably go 150. But I just never, that was his thing. I wanted him to do his thing. And I just never, I would go front run for him. I'll go in front of him, make a pass, tell him what the conditions are. And that was fun to be a part of that stuff.
Hey,
Wasn't a real focus for me.
Yeah. Interesting stuff.
When Chuck was talking about Ray Caselli, that was a boat called Panic Mouse.
Oh yeah.
I remember that as a kid. Panic Mouse. Yeah.
And you mentioned too, Mike, and maybe we'll talk about it a little bit. You mentioned you were wrapped up when you did the kilo run. So
yes.
for people don't know, that's an Australian style, right? You basically
handles
take
behind your back. Yeah.
2 handles behind your back. Front hand holds the rope, pulls up the slack, and it just pulls the middle of your back. And it makes it really easier. It takes a lot of stress off your arms, obviously. And Chuck, you've never done that, right? You've always been a proponent of hands out front.
I did make a
every
sling
Catalina race that way, right?
That you could go either way instantaneously. What it was, I used it one time in the last race in the Catalina race. And what it is, it's a nylon strap that goes around your bathing suit. And the strap comes up, and on the strap, what's really hard is to hold on to the bar or your handles when you're going that fast without wrapping, if you're holding hands out. So I mastered that by I took a glove, and with resin, I made the glove as if it was a fist. But the fist just went down to your knuckles. Then I lined that. So when you put that glove on, it held it. It was like a wrench. When you turn a wrench, you have leverage. Well, that glove gave me my fingers leverage, but I could open up my fingers and fall. I'm not locked into it, but it's like a support. So I put my hands through that, and I have that finger support. Well, with the finger support, you can hang on with your hands. You're not going to get tired. And then as far as transferring the pull from my arm, my shoulders down to my hip, well, the nylon strap, if I let my arms go out, then the strap is pulling me at the waist. So it's like doing both at the same time. I want to go strictly hands out. I just pull back. And I always have the support on the fingers. So I could ski against anybody that does a solid wrap using hands out. And some of the skiers that I didn't ski much after the Catalina race, the last time I won. And some of the skiers, Craig Witt, I think, was one of them, and another one thought that I had the the strap, the nylon around my waist, they thought I wrapped it around the handle and then just hung on to it. That's suicide, because you might as well wrap yourself. That's not what I used. I used a very engineered way of skiing either way. So I could ski either hands out, or if I wanted to ski waist wrap, I just let my arms stretch out, and I'm using my waist. And I was going to put that on the market, and I thought, oh, I got out of skiing, and I don't even make helmets anymore. But you could say it wasn't a wrap, or it wasn't strictly hands out, both at the same time.
When I very first started racing, I think I did my first 2 races. My first year, in fact, my first time at Catalina, I was hands out front. In fact, I think both my first 2 times. But then that was kind of when people started doing the wrap, the Australian style. And Mike, you were one of the guys I remember that I think you lifted weights a lot. Like you were ripped, man. You were in great shape. But there was a lot of guys, as we did more Australian styles, I think a lot of guys got away from that. Like you were one of the very few guys during the 80s and early 90s. I think that was kind of one of the downfalls of the Australian guys, because I think you could get away with it. Where in the early days, I don't think you could get away with it, man. You had to be built like one of you two guys to be hands out front, right? So that was always something I kind of didn't like about the Australian. Was it took guys, and then of course when you're not working out, you're not your lats, your shoulders, your neck, you're not in as good a shape to withstand a fall. So
yeah, that was you nailed it really, Joe. Because for me, as a young kid, I looked at 2 guys, right? There was Chuck and there was Butch. One was really muscular. One was muscular but lean. My dad was more like Butch, big. My dad was just a brute. And so I just started working out because I wanted to be like them both. My whole life, all I wanted to be was like Chuck. And so Butch was this big muscular guy. And my dad would always say, look, that's strength. If you can use less of your strength than the guy next to you, you're going to outlast him, right? And so that's why I did it. And then to survive a fall, because if you fell and you were all muscular, you were certainly going to do better than a guy that wasn't, right? That couldn't keep himself together. There's so many reasons why people got hurt, from not having their upper body in shape to when the changing of the helmets. That was Chuck doesn't realize it because he's so humble, but his helmet design kept people safe for a very, very long time, because that molded helmet didn't bucket. So, at original, when people started, you get to brachial plexus injury, your head goes one way, your shoulder goes the other way. That can still happen with a helmet that doesn't bucket, right? But it's rare. What happens is when they started switching in, Australian helmets were being made. They were like a salad bowl with leather earmuffs, right? And you dig your head in the water, those things would snap. And because Chuck stopped making helmets, and then Buck started making really a Stearns helmet. Buck Baker was making a helmet, but it was really the same thing as Chuck.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but other people, those were a lot more expensive than an Australian small, medium, large helmet. And so people started switching to those, and bad things started happening. And then it went from that to now what we wear is a helmet that really is a skydiver's helmet. And they don't realize that, the back of the helmet hangs down below the crest of your skull, right? Everybody's, their skull comes down, then it jogs into their neck, and it hangs down below that. And if you fall forward, that will gulp water. And if your head is forward, that will gulp water. And, a hangman's break it stretches your neck about 3/4 of an inch, and then it just tips your neck one way or the other. When you do that, you're brain dead, you're gone. And that's the one thing that gets people killed or, permanently hurt. You have to stop that. And, now head restraints are a real popular thing. I know for me, I won't pull anybody without wearing head restraints. I flat out just refuse. If somebody gets on my boat and they don't look like they're capable of falling and taking, it's a dangerous sport. But if you're not willing to take all the safety measures possible, I don't want to pull you.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I'd rather not, because I don't want to turn the boat around and think we could have done more safety wise. Because to think you're going to pull somebody in every race and do all that stuff and never have something happen. Skiers make mistakes that observers cannot catch, right? Observers make mistakes that a skier cannot survive, right? Drivers make mistakes that a skier cannot survive. So it's a team. People are going to make mistakes. You need to be as safe as possible for one of those mistakes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Last thing I kind of want to ask you guys both about, and if I'm not mistaken, I think you guys have both been elected into the Water Skiing Hall of Fame. Chuck, if I'm not mistaken, I think, did I see like you were in the very first class they had? I believe it was in 82 or something like that.
Yeah. Chuck was 20 years ahead of me.
Yeah, that's right. 20 years. So how'd that feel, Chuck? Tell me about that, especially with Chuck, because in those days, I mean, I don't think they were really recognizing speed skiers at that time like they did in the later years.
Yeah,
so,
it was. What year?
that had to be a little bit interesting with that resume.
The Hall of 82. No, 82. Right. Yeah, that was the first year they started the American Water Ski Association, and which is connected with all the other associations throughout the world. But the AWSA is the American. Then you have one in Italy, you have one in France, in Australia, and when the original one, they figured out the guy that invented water skiing, Samuelson. Yeah, right. He invented water skiing. Right? He invented water skiing. Then you had.
I thought that was Chuck Stearns.
In those days, the ski capital was Cypress Gardens. So their best skier was Willa McGuire. So they needed a female skier. So they had Willa McGuire, and then there was the guy that started the AWSA, and they had then they needed a man skier. So I was the man skier, and the male skier, and now there's no difference female and female. But and then let me see, that was Will McGuire, yeah. One of the judges, a judge that was really famous, the first judge to judge tournaments. There was 5 of us that they put into the Hall of Fame. It was pretty neat. I went back to
wow.
Actually, it was Polk County, Cypress Gardens. They had the event, the induction. I know. It was William Barlow, yeah. And it was pretty neat. You went back there, I saw all the old skiers. Warren Witherall. There was Joe Cash. And the guy that was the jumper, that was Mike Osborne. And and of course there was also Willa Cook. Dan Haynes was the AWSA guy. Charles Sly and William Haynes both were AWSA originators. And Liz Allen, right? Liz Allen was one heck of a skier. So they had 2 women skiers. They had Liz Allen and Willa McGuire. And then I was the male skier. It was pretty neat. I was amazed that when I went back there, I felt like there were better skiers than myself. I don't know why they yeah, you had some real. You know what? You know why? Because I did both. I did that and racing. If I would have just done tournament skiing, I'm sure somebody else would have been there beside Warren Witherall. He was a great skier, and I'm sure he would.
Yeah.
But it was the fact that I did both, because back then, racing was not familiar in the AWSA. That came later. And they were familiar with racing, but it wasn't. See, you have two different worlds. You had your tournament skiers and your racers.
Yeah.
They didn't mix. So I was like, I brought in the racing end of it, and they thought that was kind of neat. So they chose me. That was probably the reason. So racing was very important in my life. I'm sure I would have never been in the Hall of Fame at that time if it wasn't for racing. You know what I mean? And that's what's so neat about being with Mike. Mike is going. I'm going to be in his boat in one of the biggest races in the world, and I don't have to worry about skiing or driving. I just observe and stay out of everybody's way. Mike, you got to give me a place where I just sit down and mind my own business and hang on for dear life.
Well, just to finish on the Hall of Fame, thing, Chuck. I mean, you're the first five. Like you're the first five out of hundreds. So that was not an accident. That's pretty amazing. Pretty amazing.
It wasn't just hundreds. To be honest, right? There's over 3 million water skiers in the world.
Yeah,
right?
If you look at it that way, sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's an elite club, and Chuck would have been there because Chuck is the greatest. He's the greatest skier of all time. Period.
Hands down.
There's nothing else. The greatest skier. There's nobody else.
Luckiest.
There's nobody else who did all that stuff. So, that's just how that goes.
Yeah.
Whatever it is,
it was all luck.
It worked.
It was all luck. Yeah, all luck, right? Chuck. I'll tell you, and the best part about that whole thing is then he goes and wins one more Catalina race after that.
The whole committee because when you go into the Hall of Fame, you're retired.
That shows you the luck part, though, because
then you turn around and win something that you went into the Hall of Fame for. I guess that's kind of like a weird thing when you think about it, because you're supposed to be retired. Actually, when I was back there, my dad. Speaking of Mike and his father, I was very close to my dad in skiing. He loved to pull me, and of course, I loved to ski. But there one time when I first went back to my first nationals in water skiing back in 50, I'm going to say it was 55. Back at Cypress Gardens, they had the nationals, AWSA nationals. And it was all new to us in the West Coast, but we had all the rules in tournament skiing, AWSA tournament skiing. And in the rules, they gave a different type of skiing, like trick skiing. You went up to 28 miles an hour, then you shorten the line. So jumping was regular jumping, and slalom was the same course and everything. But in slalom, you went up to 28. You didn't go up to 36. So when I practiced at 28, I made a special ski with double fins on the back, and I could whip around those buoys like you couldn't believe. And I had fun. Down at the stadium, we'd put up courses. I kept practicing. So we go back to the nationals, and right off, they're going to go, instead of shortening the line at 28, they wanted the speed to go up to 34. Well, I've been through the course at 34, but it's harder to go fast through a course than to go through with a short line. Short line is much easier than upping the speed. So they were going to up the speed to 34 and shorten the line. And my dad got in an argument with Bill Clifford, who was the executor of the AWSA. And my dad said, these are the rules that we use. You can't just change the rules. And it was a big thing. And they had arguments, and the committees got together and said, yep, those are the rules. You can't just change them out of, you can't just all this stuff. So in the tournament, I won the slalom with going up to 28. So I won the tournament at 28, and my dad and Bill Clifford were enemies. So now jump forward to the Hall of Fame. Bill Clifford was in charge of it. So I kind of when I got up there, I made jokes about the AWSA. I should have said it, but I said, the biggest thing, the reason why I'm here is because he's interested in money. like that. I made some, some side jokes as I was giving my talk. I was thinking of my dad at the time being angry and he and Bill Clifford at the Hall of Fame. So that was on my mind, and you shouldn't
Mhm.
think bad of anybody at any time. That doesn't work out. But I was kind of snobbish at the Hall of Fame. It's terrible, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's something that
Great.
important.
We're all
Yeah.
allowed our little snafus here and there, especially you, Chuck. And then Mike, later years, they finally let the ski racers come in to the Hall of Fame, and you were lucky enough. Well, obviously, you walked right in. You should have. So, how'd you feel about that experience?
Well, it was amazing for me because one, when Chuck was inducted in the Hall of Fame, he was inducted for his tournament skiing and speed skiing, right? So the first time they were going to induct only a speed skier, I was the first one to ever be inducted as just a speed skier. So, and it was 20 years after Chuck was the first male skier, and it was my hero. It was my dream to always be in the same breath of Chuck. Right? That's as that little boy. That was his dream, was to be considered like Chuck. And so when that happened, um, my picture's on the wall, and it was 6 feet away from Chuck. So, for me, I stood there with my family, and all I kept saying was that little boy got his dream. That little boy got his dream. I worked hard enough. I outworked enough people. I had enough luck, and you know, there I am. There's my hero. That's who I wanted to be like, and there's me. And I have a letter, because people wrote letters to, for my induction, right? One of those letters is from Chuck,
Oh, nice.
and that letter is framed in my room. That I have trophies and posters of things that we've won. That letter is framed in there, and yeah, that was at that point, before people, even as I was hurt, I was all beat up from that fall. Guys would talk about how fast they were. Um, I remember a guy was talking how he was the fastest hands up front skier ever. And I went, "You're not even the fastest hands up front guy now, let alone ever. I mean, ever. Go back to the 70s, those guys they would go circles around you, right?" And he would just talk. So I borrowed a ski with my bad arm, and I had a friend of mine drive my boat. I went out and just paddled that guy. And so then he said, "Well, I wasn't including you, Mike." Well, no, you did say you're the fastest ever. And so I did it. And now I beat you with my broken arms. I still beat you, right? I could still get enticed into a battle like that. After I was inducted in the Hall of Fame, I could no longer get enticed to something like that. I would just go, "Look, man, you know what? Say whatever you want. Put your face on the wall in that room. Then maybe you can entice me to a race. Then from that point, then it's about who is the greatest of all time, and there'll never be an argument for me who's the greatest water skier of all time, because he's the other guy on the line right now. That's Chuck, and there's no question of anybody else, right? There is the conversation stops there, right? He was the Michael Jordan
Well,
of
you're really
water
kind,
skiing.
Mike,
So it
but
stops there,
Mike, I
right?
I think another thing that helped you get into
I
the
think
Hall of Fame was
a
your
lot of people
barefoot
would agree
skiing.
with
You were
that,
the
if not the
greatest
majority.
barefooter, fastest barefooter in the world. I think that was similar to the reason why I was in the Hall of Fame, because of my racing. I think a lot of that barefoot skiing, because that was kind of new to the AWSA, although they do have that competition now, but. Um, that was the thing that really brought you into it. That helped bring you into it, but it was your racing mainly, I know.
Yeah. So I mean, whatever it was, man. to be the first speed skier only, 20 years after Chuck. My picture's always right down the wall from Chuck.
That's awesome.
Yeah. That's
awesome.
My father. He would make trips to Florida to go in the room and just look. And he would just, and the thing that would always come in his head would always be, man, that kid got his dream, didn't he? That kid worked that hard and he got his dream. And that's, all the way up until the time he passed away. I mean, my dad was strong as an ox. He didn't pass away for any illness. But, we would always talk to each other and tell each other how proud we were of each other and how proud he was my dad. And he would talk about how proud he was that I was his son. But the things that he would be proud of was things like that. He'd always bring it up. Not the fact that you're in the Hall of Fame. That's great, but that's not what makes me proud. What makes me proud is you were 10 years old when you said what you were going to do, and you never stopped. Even though you had plenty of adversity, you got knocked on your butt plenty of times, but you never stopped. You did exactly what you preach, which I preach it all the time, is just never stop coming forward. And that's what he says. That's what makes me the most proud, is your relentless charge to go forward to achieve what you wanted as a little boy. And that's why that means so much to me all the time, because I think about it, and I think about the pride my mom had in her eyes, the pride my dad had in his eyes, my sister, my brother. My brother got to introduce me to the crowd. And nice. Yeah, it's big.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. It's awesome. And it's awesome to be able to talk to two guys that are in that place. So I appreciate it. Thank you guys for coming on. It took us a little while. I had a little technical difficulty. I'll do the best I can to edit this up as good as I can. And hopefully I get out there in July. The race is on July 13th. Chuck, you're not going to get in the way. I'm sure you're going to be an angel on Mike's shoulder, and he's going to do better because you're there, I'm sure.
Mike is the leader. Whatever he says, I do. I mean, he injected new life into my body. I can hardly wait.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's awesome. Mike, yeah, I take lots of pictures. I want to see lots of those big smiles on Chuck's face in that boat, man.
Yes, sir. We will.
All right.
For
sure.
Okay, definitely. Thanks again. I really appreciate it. Take care and have a good time.
All right, Joe. I'll talk to you soon, Chuck.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys.
All right, guys.
Have a great day. I appreciate it. Take care.
Thank you for listening to Powerboat Talk. If you like what you've heard, please head over to Apple Podcasts and give us a 5-star review. For more Powerboat Talk, follow us on Facebook or Instagram, or visit our website at powerboattalk.com.